What's up everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm pulling the big turbo off the ST. Stay tuned. I've had the bigger turbo on the car now for a little over 2 years. It is the ATP turbo kit that comes with the Garrett. It's a 2867R. It's the Gen 2. When I first put the bigger turbo on here, I did have expectations of taking this thing to much higher horsepower numbers. But like I said, it's a little over 2 years later. I am married. I've got a little 8-month-old. So this car has pretty much just become my little fun vehicle for the weekend. With that being said, I can't justify having this $2,000 turbo on here anymore. The occasional pull getting on the highway is fun, but it's just not worth the money anymore. So I'm gonna take it off and probably sell it, and then I'll be putting the stock turbo back on. I'm gonna get the car backed in here a little bit further away from where it's at right now. I'm gonna try to leave just enough room for my wife to still be able to pull in here, just in case we have some crazy weather or something. And then I'll get the car up in the air, jacked up in the air. I've got the car up in the air, so I just used jack stands on the front pinch welds, and then I'm sitting on the ramps in the rear. So I already have a video that I went into pretty good detail on pulling the stock turbo and installing the big turbo. So I'm not gonna go into full detail on this video, but I will leave a link in the description for that video if anyone's interested. The first thing that I took off that you already saw was these two splash guards. So it's just a bunch of these T25 torque screws, and then these things slide right out. So the next thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get underneath the car and pull the mid pipe out, and then I'll start working on getting the down pipe out. I've got the mid pipe taken off, so it's just this exhaust bracing with two torque screws, and then on either end, one going to the downpipe and then the other going to the back of the exhaust. It is 2 screws and 2 bolts, and then a gasket for each one. Now that I've got the mid pipe off, I'm gonna start working on getting the downpipe out. I've got the downpipe removed, so the first thing that I took off was this bracing. So it's 4 bolts and then 2 nuts. And then these washers I had to put on here to space out the brace from the top of the car, because the aftermarket downpipe does not have a brace on the side of it like the OEM one does. So every time I would accelerate in first gear, sometimes second gear, if I was on a hill, it would actually push back a little bit and then it would rub here. And it took me about 3 months to figure out what that noise was. But when I finally did, I was happy that it was such an easy fix. So 2 washers in between the bracing and the top of the frame. As far as the downpipe goes, it's just 2 small bolts in the back here, and then you have your 2 O2 sensors. So I do have a defouler on this one. I will try to show you when I get the cowling off, because I do have to take that off. I will try to show you where those connect in better. And then the last piece is the V-band clamp that attaches the downpipe to the turbo. It's just 1 bolt, and you can take the nut all the way off, and then the downpipe should come straight out. Now that all the exhaust stuff is off, I've got to pull some of the stuff off from the top. So I'll start with the wipers here, and then it'll be this front cowling, and then I will take off the intake from the turbo. Wipers, cowling, and the intake are off. With this front cowling off, you can get to the plugs for the O2 sensors on the downpipe much easier. So right here, you have this one with 4 prongs. So this is the one that connects to the downstream O2 sensor. That's the one that I have my defouler on. And then right here is a 6-prong plug. This is the one that plugs into the upstream O2 sensor. For the wipers and this little front cowling here, the wipers, you'll have this 15mm nut, and then this washer and this cover that goes over it. I will say this, these wipers, this is the second time I've had to take these things off, obviously from putting the turbo on the first time, and they're a pain to, like, you think you're gonna break, you know, something in there, but you really do have to shake it pretty good to get these things to come off both sides. And then these little covers, they just pop up, and then you have one little 10mm bolt that holds that into the, holds the cowling down. And then the last thing that you saw me remove was the 2 little clips that are holding this part of the wire harness to that cowling. For the intake, you have 2 wire harnesses you have to unplug. So this one up front right here, and then you have one in the back here. This is not the stock intake. So for me, I just had to remove this filter. It's just a little bolt holding the hose clamp on. There is an air box that you will have to remove if you are taking off an OEM filter. The other thing that I had to remove is this little bolt right here. And then over here is my hose clamp. Well, it's actually on the car still, but the hose clamp that holds the intake into the other coupler that goes onto the turbo. Now that I've got the intake off, the only other thing that I have to take off before I can actually start taking the turbo off is the hot side charge pipe. So it's just a couple of hose clamps and a couple of bolts underneath. Hot side charge pipe is off, so it's just these 2 little Allen bolts right here, and this is an aftermarket one, so I think I'm pretty sure the stock ones are different actually. I don't really remember what it was like when I took my stock one off, but I'm not sure if I'm actually going to keep these or if I'm going to go back to the stock charge pipes, because I have the tile blow-off valve on the cold side of it. If I do decide to keep these, I'm going to have to put the block-off plate on the stock turbo where the blow-off valve is at. But I'm not sure yet. I may just go back to the stock ones. That way I don't have to do all that. And then I may sell these along with the bigger turbo, because whoever buys a bigger turbo is going to have to relocate their blow-off valve anyway. So they may want to make a package deal or something. Look who came out for a stroll to visit. Hey, Mom. Zoom sucks on this thing. It's been a couple of days, so I got all of the exhaust components disconnected. I got the intake taken off and the hot side charge pipe taken off. So now what I've got to do is get the coolant drained and then get the vacuum lines disconnected and the rear motor mount undone. I've got all of the coolant drained from the car, so I did disconnect the cap to help it flow a little bit easier. And then your drain plug is on the side of the radiator down here by where the charge pipe, the hot side charge pipe, goes into the intercooler. You can see the little nipple that sticks off to the side, and then you do have to use a pair of pliers to actually twist that thing. That makes it drain because it is pretty tight on there. For my vacuum lines, it's all rubber hosing and these little green hose clamps. So this side right here goes to my intake. This middle one right here goes to the wastegate. And then this little small hose over here goes to the hot side charge. To disconnect the vacuum lines from the car, it's just this little clip right here. So you've got this little metal piece. You just push it down, and then this thing will slide out of this spot right here. For the stock turbo, there would be one more line to disconnect. It would be this vacuum line right here. So I've got a bolt and a hose clamp on this one. So this would be going to the blow-off valve, but I'm not using mine, obviously, because the big turbo does not have a built-in blow-off valve. So I've got my cold side charge pipe with my tile blow-off valve down there. The last thing that I took out, and I've heard it's not necessary, is the rear motor mount. So I just removed the 2 bolts. The mount is actually still there, but it does give you about an extra inch and a half of playroom to get the turbo out of there. Everything's disconnected from the turbo now, so it's just oil lines, coolant lines, and then these 4 nuts holding it to the motor. Alright guys, big turbo is out of the car. Taking all of the lines off. So my oil feed line I have to take completely off, and then I didn't think I was going to have to take the coolant feed line completely off, but once I actually got all of my 4 nuts off of the flange where it attaches to the car, I realized that this little elbow right here, where it attaches right here, that little elbow kept getting hung up, and I could not get this thing off with that on there. So I did end up taking that one completely off of the car, but I was able to leave the oil return line all hooked up, and then obviously the the coolant return line all hooked up, and then the oil return line hooked up. The other thing that I took off camera were these couplers, so it's just a couple of hose clamps and those things come right off. One last thing to mention is I did think that disconnecting the rear motor mount was going to help, and it did, but I remember when I put the big turbo on here originally, I had the front bumper taken off. I didn't have any charge pipes on here, and I did realize that when I was trying to swing the motor, the cold side charge pipe, which is now a 3-inch diameter, was hitting, and I only got about a 1/2 inch of play, but for the big turbo, you can can actually get it out. However, when I go to put the stock turbo back on, I'm definitely going to have to take the cold side charge pipe off. With that being said, for my next video, I will probably be removing the cold side charge pipe, disconnecting the tile blow-off valve, probably have to take the front bumper off to do all of that, and then I will hopefully get the stock turbo reinstalled. That's going to wrap this video up, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like the video if you really liked it. Subscribe to the channel, and I will catch you next time.